Welcome to the Gnostic Rebellion. Today we're speaking with Dr. Joshua Pritikin, author of a wonderfully interesting book that deals with a core theme here at the Gnostic Rebellion and the Gnostic book that deals with I'm sorry, and the Gnostic Church of Light. Religion Unburdened by Belief is the name of the book. We'll introduce him in a moment, but you'll find immediately below this video, in the description, you'll find a link for our donation button at uh, PayPal, and this program supports the Gnostic Church of Light. It's an historic building, and we invite you to become part of our historic congregation. We're the first fully owned and operating Gnostic church on the continents of the Americas, and your donations are tax deductible. While you do that, we'll extend this blessing. May wisdom and divine providence increase the unique genius of our congregation and bring us to health, wealth, and increase of days. Okay. Having earned his PhD in psychometrics in quantitative psychology from the University of Virginia, Dr. Joshua Pritikin, during his academic career, contributed to 10 peer reviewed publications and now maintains a practice in White City, Oregon. He runs Estrella Counseling and holds a level 3 certification with the IFS Institute, which perhaps we'll talk about a little bit later. But it is his book, Religion Unburdened by Belief, that brings us here today.
Okay, so I feel like I'm getting lost about where are we in the discussion. So
Well, we're still covering the that ultimate experience. What were you calling it again? I forgot the word. I'm so good with words.
you mean like samadhi or
No, back to your
firmness?
terminology. Um, the the potent experience, the
Firmness, like
firmness.
a
I
yeah.
couldn't think of the word. Um, and so obviously for your allegory, the firmness is really I can hold myself, and overcome the urge to um, indulge in the psychedelic effect.
Well, in personal material.
Yeah. The what was it? It wasn't Ravi Shankar, but it was one of the other big gurus in the '60s, and he would just go on stage and drop acid and say, "It doesn't affect me." It was so cool. He had what you seem to call a certain firmness.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say like that sounds like firmness to me.
But then his pretense was that he had already worked out absolutely everything, and his life was now egoless, and so there's no development because there's no need for development. And when he dies, he'll finally go back to source, and he won't have to suffer incarnation anymore. And, if I could be king of the universe, I'd hope never to go back to that source and that I could keep enjoying my passions here on earth. That I'll be a better piano player yet, that I'll be a better thinker, that maybe my next life I'll finally get that PhD I wanted. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, but hold on. Not like it sounds like his apparent firmness that he could take LSD and not be affected by it was mixed up with a whole bunch of metaphysical beliefs about um, that we should want to not incarnate anymore or something like that, which I don't know. Some people may subscribe to that, but I'm not sure that we all should.
No, I'm not so sure that we all should either. And I don't think there's anything illegitimate to wanting to aspire to that, although I can't for the life of me really see it.
Yeah.
Especially because metaphysically, I'm not convinced that there is a source. So you're just making a zombie out of yourself. I don't care how enlightened that may seem. And these guys tend to sell a lot of books or get a lot of, students to give them money and obeisances and worship and all this other kind of stuff. And, basically, I just want the young girls if we got to do that.
Right.
You know,
Um,
I mean, go that far.
but I think we are in agreement, like that if he could take LSD and then show no signs of intoxication, then that sounds like firmness to me, and I think it's a great example.
I understand firmness now, and I understand that as a strength. I understand that as a mental acuity. And I wouldn't object to the practice of that. Um, you could do all sorts of other things, right? See how long you can sit out in the snow naked, right? You could, you could do all sorts of physical endurances. I used to know this one
That
guy.
Yeah, that are measurable, that you could
Yeah.
assess whether you're passing or failing.
And yes, and then we can control whether you have control over your body, control over your mind. This is all certain testing. Um, you're now, those are two parts of a larger platform upon which to build, a spiritual career, shall we say, or
Wait, two
spiritual
parts.
path.
What are the two parts of the larger platform?
Well, the firmness and the unblending, right? The understanding of unblending, the success at um, psychological well-being, right?
Okay,
There's
yeah.
maturation in unblend. I think that's immediately applied, right? And people would be surprised at how immature they really are. Realize. We go to professional environments. It's just as bad as this working class environment I'm in. Just different. Um, so you have those two things. Um, but there are other parts of the spiritual career that is still important. And I guess the next one, which we have already talked about, that I would come up with immediately is belief structure and your attitude towards belief structure. Not your attitude, but one's attitude towards belief structures and what beliefs they hold, why they hold them, and to ask the question that never seems to get asked in my mind: are any of them even remotely important? I could say, yeah, he really, believed that God was gonna give him a good job when he got well, and he got well and he did whatever he got to do and he found a good job. So because he believed God was gonna do it, God did it, or it happened for him. Almost as if to suggest he didn't do anything to help himself along the way. It was a miracle. Um, or I believe in this religion or that God because it works well with my character. One guy told me he was really angry, and so he converted to Judaism because he liked the angry God. Um, which was a terrible reduction of Judaism, but he was really a fucking angry guy. Um, So we can have those structural beliefs. We can have blind beliefs, which I really do believe all beliefs are. Even those structural beliefs are still believing in, invisible friends in the sky, the adult version.
So what you're saying is that uh, using firmness to measure your ability to stand blended, that's all well and good. But you were suggesting that there are other capacities that we need to cultivate to
Yeah. And even
become
with,
mature people.
yeah,
And
or
it sounded like,
spiritually, right?
and it sounded like the examples that you were narrating were like kind of connected to prayer. Is that right? Or because
Well, let's hold prayer on an aside because I have a different take on that.
okay,
But I wanted to say, without specifying any of the other parts of the platform, let me give you the analogy of building a house. What makes that platform so important, and let's take the first two parts that we've already discussed, the blending, unblending, and the firmness. And let's say we didn't have that. So the base of the house that I'm building now is all rotted wood infested with termites. And I'm going to start nailing all this new wood to, the base to build my walls, right?
okay,
How long is that house going to stand? Not far, if I even get it built, right? Um, so without that platform of those two things, whether you're going to do this through a psychedelic ceremony or whether we're going to go into yoga and do it with body and mind that we can achieve dharana or samadhi, right?
hmm hmm
It's six of one and half a dozen of the other, or it's the Hindu idea versus the American Indian idea or the Middle American idea, right?
sure,
And I'm not going to say one is more valuable than the other. You know, uh, these both have worked for those that have gone after. It's the ones who think now they've reached the end of the road that I become concerned for. In that, if you think that's the attainment, then you've reached your end of the road, and there's not much further you can go. But I can say that there are those who have reached other higher levels of attainment that are demonstrable in their own way and uh, subjective in other ways. But yet, for those that have reached those attainments, it can be, kind of the same thing. Let's just say, for argument's sake, almost coming out of your orgasmic meditation, let's just
okay.
say we can't describe orgasm to anybody. There's no words to describe it. But I can talk to you about orgasm and you completely understand what I'm saying. You don't need the word. Why? Because you've experienced it, please, everybody. And in that, we've now gone to a very abstract concept intellectually, but a very deep spiritual experience um, uh, that is above and beyond firmness or unblending. Unless you become a sex addict, right? Then you're blending with the sexual experience. Or you become an ecstasy junkie, then you're, looking for samadhi all the time. You know what I'm saying? Um, uh, there's all sorts of addictions inside of the spiritual world, and levels of attainment you can fail at various levels. And it doesn't mean you permanently fail, but you could be failing and that could take time. And then you could get to another level, or you get to a level and that's as far as you can go in this life. You've had another conversion experience that makes you a Yankee fan.
Okay, like I feel like you're touching on many, like um maybe we could just slow down, and I feel like you're touching on too many different things. I don't know what to comment on. Um maybe these levels of attainment, I might comment on that, and in the sense
Okay.
that for like firmness, there there really isn't any limit. Like it's because you can always ask for a larger serving, and then you're tested at a
Control that for
higher.
that much longer, right? Instead of
Yeah,
meditating for an hour, now I can do it for 4 hours. Instead of
right.
meditating for 4 hours, now I can do it 12. Soon I'm going to be at the Yoga Olympics.
Yeah.
Um, right? Or I'm really, really sick because I don't seem to have time to do anything else in this life but meditate, right? There was an example of a great spirituality in India, and I think you even mentioned this in your book. I forget the guy that stands on one leg with his finger to his lip, and and they all are amazed at his saintliness because he can do it for 10,000 years, right? And I just respond to that and say, where's the spiritual attainment in that? He hasn't been able to do anything for 10,000 years but stand on one foot with his finger to his lip. I'll take 1 hour of living over that and torture me as an infant.
Right. I think uh, like the other thing is it's important to live a full life and not to neglect any of our the proclivities, inclinations of our parts. So someone that is like aesthetic, it's like taking an aesthetic path, like that's where they're just like doing one thing, like that. Then they're probably have parts they're suppressing, um,
Yeah,
which
sex drive.
create yeah, sexual parts, yeah, that are creating psychological splitting. Um, like it could put them in an altered state of mind, but it's not a balanced, it's not like a healthy way to live your life.
Well, but of course, when you put that in a belief structure where the attainment to the divine, whether that's the divine realm or to become divine, is an eschewing of all the material world. And the sex drive being one of the most material parts of the material world. It's luxury personified, right?
Sure.
Um, so this would be virtuous. And it's interesting that you bring virtue into the temple because I will insist that while you need to be virtuous, when you bring virtue into the temple, you bring danger.
Okay, I'm not following you. You said I was bringing virtue into this, and
Well, yeah, because you want to live the good life, you have to know how to, do the right thing, right? You went into that short monologue there, right? And minor long. Um, uh, and I've always said that when spirit leaves the temple, virtue rushes in to fill the void. And it was interesting that you brought up that virtuous statement on the heels of of what I was saying, in that this uh, uh, these higher levels of spirituality, you know, transcend uh, good and evil. They transcend doing right and wrong. And modern religion, with its belief structures, are all about right and wrong. And the belief structure will inevitably lead you there, no matter how much you feel you are transcendent of moral limitations, limiting your thought to moral limitation. There has to be more of them. The first two things in yoga practice, yama and niyama, right? Good thoughts, good deeds. But I'm not going to define your good deeds, right?
okay,
You
I'm still a bit lost because I'm not sure. Like you keep referencing I brought up virtue or something. What did I exactly say? Like I'm not sure.
well, you have to know how to
Maybe.
live a good. You have to know how to live a full life and a good life. You can't be meditating for 20 hours a day,
Oh,
right?
yeah, but like I would define that in terms of like you shouldn't suppress or neglect your parts, and um, so how you conduct your life should be is as much in harmony with all the parts of yourself as you can manage.
but that
I
contradicts the purity of
no, I
uh
didn't say
well,
some
wait
parts
a
are
minute,
more
you know where it's
pure
going.
than.
The purity of the ascetic. And indeed, the ascetic is the role model. He's the archetype.
Well, okay, so that if you have a belief system that overrides, you're supposing there's a like an aesthetic belief system that overrides normal human impulses, and
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
that can happen.
where are these ascetics? Yeah, we could put them in Buddhist temples, and we could put them in Catholic. What do you call those things? Starts with an M.
Seminaries
Seminary starts
or
with an M.
monasteries, yeah, monasteries.
Monastery. I was close. Um, and the in there, you got to look at both of their religions because both of their religions are identical. This world sucks and it's evil. It's all full
Yeah,
of misery, and you don't want anything to do with this world. So, like
okay.
Jesus says, you should love Jesus so much more than your wife and family that you'll just get up and drop them, and deprive them of an income and the good life they could have lived because you brought home the bacon, right? Um, because Jesus is far more important than that crap. As a matter of fact, while you're in the middle of fucking your wife, just get up and go. Let's prove that you really have control, that you're firm. Right, and
Okay.
indeed, doesn't that happen with Job in the Old Testament? And God has an argument with the devil, and they said, "Well, let's test him." So he kills off his family, takes away his wealth, and yeah, see, he still likes me. So he's
Yeah,
the third.
so I mean, so what's like I think how I would respond to that. Like what so you bring this example forward uh to like show the fragility of using belief systems to make life decisions, or like I'm not sure where you're going with this.
Well, no, I'm not worried about life decisions anymore. Um, After well, no. One of the other things you're working on while you're achieving rigidity of the body, um, is automatic consciousness. Um, Carlos Castaneda would call it, no, I'll get the word in a second, impeccability. How you instantaneously respond to situations without preparation, being surprised, being ambushed. Um, and do you do the right thing? Uh, I was going to bring up this kind of an example before and how we have control of our emotions, and I often bring this example up for people. So to pretend that you're a sales executive for a super big company. You've been working the last 2 years in some presentation that you're going to make, and if you made this presentation, you're set for life. You're, hanging out with Tesla. Okay, and you're just about to get up from your desk. You have all your materials in hand. The room is set up. The board of directors is waiting for you. And you get a phone call. Everybody you know in your family and your friends have all just gotten into a terrible auto accident and they're dead. You're due there now. What do you do? Do you control your emotions because you know that no matter what, this is the rest of your life? You will heal from this great tragedy. You may marry again, start a new family. There's all these people, but you're not going to think about that right now. You're just going to say, okay, I can rise above this for the moment. You go in there, maybe even you deliver a better presentation than you would have because your concentration now is super fixed because you got all this pain riding you. Then you go back to your office when you're done and you collapse, right?
Okay.
And um, we have that kind of control. Can your automatic consciousness do that? Maybe you're just talking to a cop who just pulled you over for a speeding ticket and you get out of it effectively. Got a great joke for that, I'll tell you sometime. Um, and by saying just the right thing, you get out of the ticket or you get a warning or whatever, right? Um, the old joke, the kid got pulled over. We used to tell his teenagers, and when the cop pulled up, he was picking his nose, and the cop got gross and just went back to his car. Uh, but
What?
impeccable behavior, disgusting, but impeccable behavior. And would that still not be, another attainment on that platform that you could be impeccable? That
The
you have.
examples you've given just now, those sound like impeccable behavior to me, where you're able to be with your parts without being blended with them. Like if you, the I like the example you gave of like doing an important business presentation, and then suddenly you find out that your loved ones have been uh, have died or have been injured, then um, but you're able to um, instead of
You're able to
blending with that
stay on
part,
course, but you've also
yeah,
shown a rigid control of your emotion.
sure, sure. So you're able to let that part know you heard it, but ask it to step back while you do the business presentation, and then as soon as you have time to be with that part, then you return to it and address its concerns, like make some calls, find out what happens, and so forth. So that sounds like a very like a mature um, like a rigid control over your emotions and I'm not sure about the word rigid. More like to me, it's more like trusting. Like that part really trusts you to uh, to take care of its needs. The one that um, is holding those family relationships.
Whereas I do see it as, a certain tension because the ego, the central operator, is saying this shuts off now, this kicks in, right? The alchemist sees the tragedy as the fire burning so that I can calcinate my herb, right? Um, the Jungian will see this as two poles, right out of Shakespeare, to be or not to be, right? We can interpret it in different ways, and maybe um, the ego loser spiritual system um, would see this one way, and the passionate other side of that would see it completely a different way. And maybe those two things will come at odds. You know what I'm saying? I should blend in with the situation, or I should rage against the machine, or I should, how's that poet say, don't give in to the dark night. Um, And yet, one of those higher spiritual experiences, now we were just still talking about platform. One of those higher spiritual experiences is learning how to surrender to that dark night. How to give into um, non-self, and even to risk seeming death, um, to get to the next level of attainment, to leap into the abyss, right? There's a point in Castaneda's book where, Don Juan puts him at the edge of a crevice and walks away and says, "You got to jump." Of course, he jumps at the end of the book, and we don't know what happens, but he comes out with the next book, so he knows he did okay. All right, and that's really all entirely symbolic. Of course, we know that didn't actually happen. But the symbolism is there intensely because in order to transcend my self, now not my ego, I can transcend my ego by just objectively sitting back and thinking of, who am I that is in control of all these other motives? And how much importance do I want to give, right? Am I more interested in drinking or showing up for work tomorrow morning? You know what I'm saying? And what does that say? So I learned to control them. Yes, I want to get to work. You know what I'm saying? And I don't have a problem till the drinking prevents me, right? Um, And so this is how we deal with drug abuse and things like that. Um, so the ego has, uh, when established and firm and matured and intelligent, gets a firm control. But just like a child that can't describe an emotional experience it's going through because it doesn't have the vocabulary yet. So also, um, there are emotional experiences that adults don't have the vocabulary for because they're not that intelligent. Maybe they have more vocabulary than a child. They might fool you in a brief interaction over the neighbor's fence, right? Um, but that becomes another issue. So, we do get back to the intelligence as another part of that platform. You have to have a developed intelligence. It's no good being a genius if you've never done anything, right? So intelligence has to be learned in both an intellectual and logical capacity, as well as an emotional and rational capacity. Um, Gurdjieff would say most people think with their feelings and feel with their thoughts. And I really agree with that.
Yeah.
See it, and I've seen it myself. You know, uh, so uh, getting all that down is a part of that platform.
Hmm.
And
So
the
you're
skill of
you're
it.
saying that. So I think what you're saying is the like firmness and measures like assesses one thing, but there are other ingredients uh, that we need to address to develop in maturity. Is that what you're getting at?
Not just to develop maturity, but to build that solid foundation with good wood,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
So we got to get to that. Now we're in a spiritual pursuit. We're still going to somehow, even though we have the problem of belief, assuming we get around that, and we have to rectify that with our intelligence. I mean, belief just has to become irrational, and we have to separate what is irrational from irrational. Um, and that's a whole other discussion. We'll leave right there. But when we get to rational, it's a question of, we start that as a process of examining our beliefs. And as we tear each one of them apart, and I'm not a post-industrialist philosopher, um, when we start to tear apart our beliefs, you see it all the time if you follow like Facebook, So let's start in the beginning. These two people fuck up and they get condemned to the world because they ate an apple. And then, in order to redeem them, uh, God puts himself inside a human woman and he births himself and makes them torture himself to death so that he can forgive them. Got it. Right. And that's uh, obviously quite sarcastic, or sardonic, however degree you want to bring it. But it's a way of tearing one belief apart. So do I believe literally in the Christian dogma, Christian doctrine? Even if I like some parts of it that seem nice or some parts that seem mystical, right? But if those parts are supposed to in any way lead me to that belief structure, now I'm being irrational and unreasonable, right? I should know better. My intelligence should tell me to rise above this. Now, if I have an emotional issue to deal with because I'm conditioned into that, I'm attached to that, then I have a blending going.
Right. So and I guess that would be my like response or counter argument is that I think I could make the case that these like the other preparation or other studies that you're proposing, like I'm not sure that they're necessarily that they're separate from this blending or unblending. Like I feel like that's such a pervasive uh, challenge in our
Well,
personality
I
that
came back to the blending myself, right? You're blending now into that belief structure and your emotional attachment to that belief structure. So we're realizing a problem, and we are back to blending and unblending. It's a blending unblending exercise, right? And we can do this with, and you'll find this out, we can do this with every single religious doctrinal belief. And I don't
yeah.
mean
So
by every single doctrinal belief within a religion, but every single religion. We can find the major part of that religion and the inherent flaw in the literal interpretation of that religion, which is where most people are at.
yeah. But like that's why I feel like the this practice of firmness and testing, being able to test people's ability to remain unblended is that's such a key, like it's such a powerful like cross-cutting kind of measurement that you can make to assess.
Yeah, what I love about it is it gives a very incredibly useful tool. I think at even every level of spiritual attainment, I think that tool is there. Even though, as I've said to you before, evocation is a more sophisticated thing, um, and deals with other parts of the psyche that may not be subject to blending and unblending issues. Um, this my old buddy who's dead now claimed to be an adept. Um, he would sign his motto with the three triangular dots, and which already is counter Rosicrucian. You don't tell people if you're an adept. So I'm going to immediately, as soon as you tell me you're an adept, you know what I'm saying? I got schizophrenia on the list, and there's plenty of people I tell monthly. Have you talked to a doctor yet? And I can tell you such stories. Guys that camp out in the backyard, wake us up in the morning, convinced that we're touched by the gods. 6 months later, wearing bras and ladies' underwear. Um, uh, Out to lunch, one guy showed up with his whole face tattooed, deeply tattooed. You know what I'm saying? Not likely to work anytime soon. Um,
Maybe appropriate in New Zealand culture.
Oh, well, he was already by the government. He gets a monthly stipend, and he just goes around the country in train rides, and wherever he ends up, he tries to meet somebody.
Hmm.
Of course, he has a spirituality, and he presented to me like 8 diaries when I met him, and they were, spirits coming down, skylark, blue, green, gotta go, orange, gold, gotta, oh, what a weepy one, this one, oh, gotta go, literal. And as sick as they come, but I think relatively harmless. I did try to talk him going back to living with his brother. That there still is a feeling of loneliness. I think, and support would help. But I didn't try to say that to him. I just said, don't you think your brother would help you out a bit more with some of this, and you don't have to sit in motel room. And he'd have a little bit more cash too. He bought a nice ring that I saw or sold. Or I don't know. So we have the schizophrenic ordeal, and I don't remember why we got there.
Okay, well, we we're like we're about approaching 3:30 Pacific time, and so maybe we can try to wrap this up. Like, um, so during our conversation today, I've tried to um, I've tried to describe firmness and how firmness seems like a great measure for um, like um, religious attainment and self-development. And
Well, it's one of
it's
a very important platform. You
okay.
know,
Yeah, and
no
so it seems
doubt.
like we largely agree about that. It seems like you feel like there may be other areas besides firmness that are important for self-development, which may be the case. Um, from let's see. So do you agree that like firmness is a non-conceptual behavioral measure?
Non-conceptual behavioral measure. Um, ooh, I really find myself having to think about that. It's the non-conceptual part I'm not sure of. I understand the behavioral measure, um, but I still think the scientific paradigm is inescapable, and that would be its conceptual measure.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, maybe okay. So maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe it's like firmness doesn't depend on content beliefs.
Firmness doesn't depend on content belief. Um, I could be a little bit more amenable to that. Um,
Okay. Because yeah, I
uh,
see your point about the yeah, like you do have to like there's a lot of like gears turning to maintain firmness. Like you have to really engage your full faculties to be able to sustain it. So so that's maybe non-conceptual is too much of a stretch, but um, to say that content beliefs are kind of orthogonal to it, that sounds more plausible.
well, yeah, content belief, removes clarity of mind. Okay, as you get to control of the mind, uh, with that should come clarity of thought.
Yeah.
You can't have clarity of thought, by the way, if you don't have enough education to balance ideas to give you, any obfuscation of thought, right? You know, um, so you're getting now to clarity of thought, and it's as much clarity of emotional thinking as it is clarity of intellectual thinking. It's much clarity of emotional feeling and the intellectual examination of those feelings, right? So you're kind of playing all four parts in maybe they're all falling around that little common ego center, and they're becoming an atom. I don't know.